What's up, cinephiles? Welcome back to the channel. Today's review is going to be Netflix's latest musical comedy, The Prom. This is an adaptation of the Tony-nominated Broadway musical which debuted back in 2018. So here's my review coming right up. But before I do that, why don't you guys show your support to the channel by hitting that like button and subscribing to us for weekly reviews of movies, TV shows, and video games. Now this one is directed by Ryan Murphy, whom you might have known as the creator of the hit TV show Glee. So much of your enjoyment for this movie will depend on your tolerance for musicals, most specifically the Ryan Murphy style. So think of that elaborate choreography, those backflips, those synchronized movements, that dazzling production designs. You can definitely count on that. This movie in particular combines Ryan Murphy's two passions, which are musical theater and high school. So mix them together and add a dash of A-list stars looking fabulous. This is what The Prom is about. But the real gist of The Prom is the story of two Broadway stars, Dee Dee and Barry, played by Meryl Streep and James Corden, who are at the low point of their lives because they've just received this negative reviews from the opening night of their musical. Most of the comments that they got are personal attacks on their reputation, so they've decided to rehabilitate their image into something that's more likable. So they've decided to focus their attention into this random girl that they've seen on Twitter who's living in the small town Indiana. She wants to go to the prom with her girlfriend, but she was banned because the high school committee would rather cancel prom than embrace this thing called inclusivity. So they decided to reach out to this poor girl, which they initially did to gain back the admiration of their fans. Also tagging along with them are their Broadway friends, played by Nicole Kidman and Rannells. This movie is all about the star power and the showstoppers. I think that's the main thing that's going to invite the audiences. In terms of staging the musical production, Ryan Murphy is really at the top of his craft. It's not easy to translate a stage production into movie format, but at the same time maintaining that live in theater energy. So this movie has no shortage of that energy. The camera work is busy as ever. We got multiple angles covering different sections, and it can be overwhelming at times because the movie runs for 2 hours and 15 minutes. I feel like the movie needs to scale down a bit at times because there's a vital message about acceptance that remains to be delivered, but most of the time it feels like a lip service, which is sometimes lost in the musical extravaganza. And I know there's a conceit when it comes to musicals because musicals live in a bubble where people profess feelings of love and admiration from each other out of nowhere, and I completely accept that, but sometimes it takes more than a song and dance number to develop the arcs of the characters. And you can definitely see the instances here where there are some cartoonish villains which transform all too quickly over the course of a musical number, so that one can be a bit glaring. And I know when it comes to musical productions, that stage productions, maybe the story is not much glaring because you're in it more for the performance, but when it comes to the movie format, you're going to observe more of the story. And I guess let's just say that The Prom really amps it up when it comes to the musical numbers, but when it comes to the story department, that's where the movie lacks. It has the tendency to feel bloated and thin at the same time, and by bloated, I'm talking about the musical productions where everything is just loud, and then thin all the dramatic moments that you needed to hit those emotional points with nuance. And granted that when it comes to musicals, nuance and subtlety is not the first thing that I'm really looking for, but the movie could have used some of that. And when it comes to the debate whether that teen deserves to attend the prom with her girlfriend, not much insight is actually offered. Maybe the film knows that the bigot side won't really have a case much because of the world that we have now, where there are more progressive people, more accepting members of the society. And I feel like this is where the movie has exposed its weakness because it kind of feels outdated. I know that the source materials for this stage production is based on an incident in Mississippi high school back in 2010, which, come to think of it, 10 years is already long enough, and I feel like the dialogue has evolved since then, so that main premise doesn't really stand much against scrutiny. So the movie tries to address that conflict through musical numbers, and I think America's problem on bigotry, and any nation for that instance, is so complex that it can't be solved by simple song and dance numbers, but the movie gives the impression that it's gonna be like that because the movie is just so loud, it's just preaching to the choir most of the time, and honestly it felt a little too aggressive to the point that it's putting on a show, and it expects to get a credit for what it has done, when in reality there's not much depth really offered. When it comes to the pacing, I think it's also uneven because at this point we have so much characters, like 8 main characters, and giving each one an arc could be a bit of burdensome, and at the end of the movie there's a redemption for each. So I feel like I was watching the Oprah show where you get a happy ending, you get a happy ending, and it can be a bit tiresome. And I'm not gonna fault the director on that because these problems that I found are mostly rooted on the source material. Tonally, those two stories, from the Broadway stars arc to the high school students arc, they don't have a good rhythmic edit to them. Honestly, I felt like the movie could have benefited more if they stick with the satirical take on the Broadway stars, because that's what's happening at the beginning of the movie when they start to sing "This is not about me," which is kind of funny because this is evidently about them. For the most part, you can enjoy watching these A-listers doing all their fabulous things, each one having their own moment to shine. Ryan Murphy made sure of that. Meryl Streep, of course, he is a cinematic treasure. It's a blast watching her enjoy this musical. Like, I felt like I remembered watching her in Mamma Mia. She's having a good time poking all the fun of what it means to be a celebrity. In here, she also displays some real belting skills. Then James Corden, his character here, he is nursing old wounds pertaining to his past experience of coming out to his parents. I'm not entirely sure if James Corden is perfect person for this role because he gives out some sort of a caricaturish performance, and I needed subtlety and nuance, but you know, for the most part, you can enjoy him. He and Meryl Streep are clearly having the time of their lives while doing this musical. Nicole Kidman, she has a jazz music here called Zazz. As much as I love that performance and as much as I love her portrayal here, she is the one character that you can definitely cross out in this movie and even make this movie better because it feels overlong at this point. And then for the high school arc, it's just a typical Mean Girls story, you know, basic plotting, but I didn't mind much if the movie stayed more focused on that because that is where the heart of the story is. Jo Ellen Pellman, I think she deserves more screen time here because the movie doesn't seem especially interested in making her a fully fleshed character because most of the time she's just oblivious to the unsolicited help that she's going to get from the Broadway stars. But for what it's worth, I like her character's courage and her wide-eyed optimism, and Jo Ellen Pellman is just really amazing here. The actress here has such a warm and inviting presence. He kind of reminded me of a young Drew Barrymore. She has a lovely singing voice, and honestly, I enjoyed more of her performances out of the bunch because everything at this point has been so loud that when we get to the ballad, to the heartfelt moments of hers, that's where I think the movie really shines. And I can say the same here for Ariana DeBose, who plays her girlfriend. I think those two are really stars in the making. They have lovely duets. Then Keegan-Michael, he's here as the principal, the sole person who's willing to stand up against the bigotry in the school. I'm actually surprised a few weeks back when I saw Key on Jingle Jangle because I did not realize that he has such a broad vocal range, and here he sings some ballad. Honestly, I want to see him more on musicals. His arc is mostly tied up to the arc of Meryl Streep since he plays here the love interest. So he tries to transform the perspective here of Meryl Streep's character as redefining what it is to be a star, that the joy and healing does not come from glorifying oneself but by giving joy to the others. So I think that's nice. When it comes to the soundtrack, honestly, I think it's catchy on a serviceable manner. None of them are really spine-chilling for me or something that is truly memorable for me. Maybe it has something to do because the movie has been so long and there are so many songs featured that ultimately the quantity has affected the quality of the movie. And I just wish that the movie took a step back on all those loud production numbers because I needed a moment of silence for these characters, not necessarily blurting out their feelings out loud, like say for La La Land, like have a moment where the actors will really shine. We're just gonna stare at their faces and convey through their emotions and not necessarily speaking out that they're depressed, that they're sad. Because as I've said, I felt like this movie has been shouting at my face, and honestly, it won't stop until you're convinced that you're pleased. If you could just block the noise away and focus on what the prom represents, which is an uplifting celebration of love, acceptance, and inclusion, no matter how flashy and excessive it is, I think you're going to appreciate this more. This movie is definitely unafraid to have fun. You can go and put this on the feel-good movies of 2020. I just wish that the advocacy of this film are not just marketing points that they have to go through lip service, and something that will provide insight that will blend more into the texture of the film, making it more meaningful. So for now, I'm going to settle with a 3 out of 5 stars. And that's it for my review of the musical adaptation of The Prom. Let me know what you think in the comment sections down below. Also, if you enjoyed watching this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to us for weekly content. Thank you so much for watching. Until then, see you on the next one.